Some of the brothers and sisters that maybe moved from other countries, you don't care who Kobe Bryant is, but you might be able to connect back to a celebrity. And I remember, when Michael Jackson and Sheikh Abdullah Jibreen, rahimahullah, died the same day. How many people were grieving over a scholar versus a singer? But I grew up with him. I saw him every day. He was dancing across the screen. It's different, right? How do we understand this in our day to day? Parasocial relationships, which are these connections that we forge with people that we don't really know, but we feel like we know, often fill the void with real relationships that we don't have. And we have an epidemic of loneliness now. More so probably than any point in human history, people suffer now more from loneliness than ever before. And so we develop these attachments to people that seem larger than life. We know celebrities more than we know our next door neighbors. What point in human history can you go to where people know more about the family life and every single detail of someone than they know about the person that lives next door than right now? And that should give us some pause. A lot of times we escape our own troubles in life to go to their glamorous lives, and we see their glamorous lives, and it seems so wonderful. And then when their lives fall apart, we feel betrayed. Hey, this wasn't supposed to happen to you. This happens to people like us. It doesn't happen to people like you. In fact, subhanAllah, if you read historically, people in poor societies, poor and the lowly classes in societies grieve more for the rich and the elite when they die, especially if they're perceived to be benevolent or they had some sort of an impact on their lives. They feel a lot of pain, even though when someone from my village dies, it's really hard to take care of those that are left behind. When someone from that class dies, they're not going to have to worry about their expenses. They're not going to have to worry about whether or not they'll be able to afford school or what the implications are financially. They don't have to worry about those things. But still, there's an attachment that we develop. There's a psychiatrist in Seattle by the name of Dr. Jill Gross. She said, our relationships with celebrities don't necessarily follow typically understood measures of time and space, making them subconsciously immortal to us. They don't even age with us. You still remember them in their prime. They don't even age with us. It's a different type of attachment. And so because they have oversized influence in our lives while they're alive, their deaths also have oversized influence to us, even with their own imminent deaths. I'm more sad about the death of this person than I am about the fact that I'm going to go one day too, and I don't know what's going to happen to me. So that's one of the connections that we make. And we have to prosecute ourselves for this tragic disengagement that we have with death. And I was reading Brother Mubin Vaid. He posted an excerpt from a book about how in Victorian times, children used to be kept away from intimacy and birth, and they likely never even witnessed a birth or witnessed intimacy, but they would all be very familiar with death. Why? Because when the elderly age, everyone in the house has to take care of the elderly, and then there's the washing and the burial process. There's no professional thing to do that. Everyone is engaged, so people witnessed death. Now, it's been reversed. Not just storing the elderly away as we do in our societies, but also how many people have the experience of actually washing a dead body, putting someone in the ground that's beloved to them. What is that whole experience like? And that's something we have to remember. The Prophet ﷺ taught us to engage al-maut, to engage death, not just to remember it, but when we have opportunities to participate in the ritual of it, to remind ourselves. Because people are disengaged from that concept altogether. And so when it hits, it seems unreal. The Prophet ﷺ taught us to familiarize ourselves with the inevitable. Don't make it unreal and push it off as a thought. It is inevitable. And if you engage it in a healthy way, just like everything else that's inevitable but stressful, you manage the stress about it better. So you have to engage it. And we have to learn to think about it in that way. And for some people, of course, there are those that have lost loved ones, that when they see the death of someone publicly, it triggers their own loss. That's also a psychological component, a human component. I buried someone beloved to me. Every time I see someone burying someone beloved to them, it reminds me of that pain. I was reading Sister Ibtihaj Muhammad talking about her sister, rahmatullahi alayha, who passed in Ramadan, and how the whole thing brought it back to her. A lot of people express that sentiment as well. I've buried someone beloved to me. It reminds me of the tragedy of the separation of families that death brings. As for Kobe Bryant himself, beyond just the natural mercy that we feel in our hearts and the prayer that we can make for his family, his wife, his 3 children that are left behind, that Allah give them comfort and guidance and tranquility and healing, and really mean that for the family that's left behind. No money is going to be able to compensate for the loss of a father, the loss of a husband. So beyond that, what do? We can look to some of his good deeds. We can celebrate some of those good deeds without turning him into a prophet, without overlooking some of the more problematic aspects of his legacy, which hurt a lot of people. Without doing any of that, what can we learn from that? Well, for one, if you think about, subhanAllah, what this conversation provoked in terms of girl dad, the father of daughters, and the love that a father has for their daughters. Something that the Quran spoke to very early on. وَإِذَا بُشِّرَ أَحَدُهُمْ بِالْأُنْثَى, when a person is given the glad tidings of a daughter. And the love that he spoke about for his 4 daughters, and how he would have been happy to just keep on having daughters. He didn't want any sons. We could learn from that. That love that a father would have for his daughter. And he talked about what that meant for him in his life. There's a brother by the name of Dr. Amir Hassan Loggins who wrote an article for BET called Kobe Bryant and the Father Mentality. And he said something very beautiful. He said, I cannot relate to Kobe Bryant, the Los Angeles Laker. I can't fathom winning an NBA championship or earning an Olympic gold medal, but I wholeheartedly can relate to Kobe Bryant, the father, the man who loved and dedicated his life to his children. He was my favorite version of Kobe. Your parents give you a name when you're born, but then there is a moment in life when a new name presents itself as a gift. This time, your child names you. Some say Baba, some say Pops, some say Daddy, some say Dad, but it all translates to the same thing, Father. It's a name that you must earn. It's a name that you must live up to. You are a father. Fatherhood is beautiful. It is boundless. It can make you feel as full as the belly of a feasting fool, and at other times as empty as the stomach of one starving during famine. At moments it hurts us deep, at others it hugs us tightly, and it's what makes a beatific struggle. It's a beautiful reflection. Some of us saw a dad there. You see a father, and you relate to that. And we start to take lessons from that. That's one thing that you can take. From the victims of police brutality, no family connected, or I felt a greater connection to than the family of Jordan Edwards, who a few years ago, 2 years ago, in fact, was murdered here. 15-year-old child, shot in the head by a police officer in a car doing absolutely nothing wrong. In the head, his brains blown out in the laps of his brothers, who were so traumatized by that incident that they couldn't sleep with the light off. You know, boys that are teenagers, that are grown, that did nothing to deserve witnessing that tragedy. And the father, I remember looking at Odell Edwards, the father of Jordan Edwards, who now's forgotten in the press, who did everything he possibly could to raise those kids so that they don't have to witness that type of tragedy, right? So that his young black boys could be protected in a crazy society.